Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, type in good morning. Morning, Andrew. Thanks for the heads up, my friend. Very helpful. Good morning, Sonia. Hey, Julia. Hi, Stephen, Arjun, Owen, Ariana, John. Hannah, good morning. Ritu, what is up? My friends, we have an exciting class today. Last week, we were starting to zero in on logic. We started with our reading, which was a little awkward because we hadn't seen what Peirce's logic looks like. But I hope that after the end of the class, by the time we had started sampling some of it, you were getting a better sense of what he meant in his reading. Did the reading make more sense on the second approach? When you went for a second wash, did it make more sense? Yeah, I figured as much, right? And so it was a toss-up. I figured, well, we either start with the logic first, actually seeing it, in which case it'd probably be a little abrupt, or we hear Peirce's thoughts on it, and then those would be a little cryptic. So the trade-off is, is that we went for cryptic first, and then sort of things got revealed. But remember, the secret is to reread. Anyways, in philosophy, rereads and rewrites are crucial. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to display the full power of this logic, which we only glimpsed. I mean, we didn't really see what this logic does, and it does stuff. And so we'll take a step into the future, because I, along with Peirce, really believe that this is the logic of the future. And what we're going to do is we're going to examine the 5 permissions. There are 5 moves, which, by the way, if you study different systems of logic, that's actually a ridiculously parsimonious system of logic. It accomplishes so much with so little, which gets logicians giddy, by the way. That's something that logicians really prize. Anytime you can do all of the work of logic with as few assumptions as possible, that's always good. And those assumptions, those moves that we're going to be doing are manifestly correct, right? So there's going to be an iconic component to the way we're going to be doing things today. The signs that we'll employ bear a similarity to whatever it is that they're trying to represent. And there's a semiotic power there that other systems of logic lack. Those that are symbolic systems will obviously hang on convention, being symbols, being signs that convey in virtue of an agreement, just in virtue of a convention. And so the system today is going to be very intuitive in many respects. And we'll also practice direct and indirect derivations. We'll see what that means, but it's essentially trying to extract conclusions from premises and actually seeing whether arguments are any good. So we'll have a principled way of sifting through arguments. My friends, the reading last week, we skipped a page. This was the page. I'm going to read that page right now. Having once written something upon the sheet, or an area cut from the sheet, all that we have to do is avoid all danger of transforming the true into the false. So that's the blueprint of what we're trying to do today, right? We're going to write stuff on the sheet of assertion, or an area cut from the sheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to find ways of manipulating the diagrams in ways that never transform the true into the false. So if we assume that what we've put on there is true, we're always going to keep getting truths out of it, which is an amazing device if you think about it. And we're going to do that in virtue of rules of transformation, right? And again, a rule of transformation, by a rule of transformation, we mean a general permission to make certain transformations under certain circumstances, on the ground that such transformations can transform anything, can never transform anything true into anything false, right? And there's 5 rules: double cut, erasure, insertion, iteration, deiteration. We're going to learn that today. And all of this is in part from the recently released and ongoingly released Logic of the Future by Charles Peirce, Writings on Existential Graphs, which I've actually worked on a little bit. And so this is just coming out, right? And it's called Logic of the Future. This is from a passage in which Peirce says, I believe this is the logic of the future, and so on. So with that in mind, my friends, is everyone ready to don their VR gear and their aptic glove? Are you good to go? If you're good to go, tell me good to go. Put on your VR gear, everyone. We're going to step into the future. We're going to do some logic like you've never seen it done before. All right, let's, and so as we put on our VR gear, we're going to enter a virtual room. And notice, I want to point out one thing before we completely leave the real world as we know it. Notice there's a glove also, right? So this is observation over here, right? But there's not just observation in this system, there's manipulation. And mani comes from the word hand. May in French, you get the root a little more clearly. We're going to manipulate the diagrams that we see. So you don't just need goggles for this. It's not purely contemplative. You need a glove. You need to be able to move stuff around. All right, so I'm putting on my VR gear. Here we go. All right. Can everyone see? Are we all in the white room? Tell me yes if you're in the white room. Cool. You are in the room. All right, my friends. I can't see you in the room, but we're all there together. It's a joint space because this is a space where we're supposed to converge on the conclusions that we draw, right? There's supposed to be something demonstrable that would attract a consensus. All right. The way I'm going to do this, I've got some structure, but I'm going to try to make it as interactive as possible as befits the topic. And that's going to require you to play along. And so what I want to do right now is, do I have a volunteer to make a true proposition, to claim something true? Do I have a volunteer? If you want to volunteer, say yes. I want you to make a true claim. Say yes if I've got a volunteer. Remember, we need to play along if this is going to be a little more fun and interactive. Okay, so John, could you write in the chat bar a very simple claim, a very simple sentence that we would all agree is true? Very simple one. That we're sure, think about it for a moment, don't rush, that we'd all agree to is definitely true. North is always the same direction. All right, that's cool. Does everyone agree? Type in agree if you agree. North is always the same direction. That's clever, John. That surprised me, but that's cool. That's why I want to leave it free, right? All right. So, John, you made that claim. You have the privilege of choosing a symbol for it. Could you pick an uppercase letter for it, please? Type in an uppercase letter, and we'll agree that that's what that stands for. Okay, so henceforth, everyone, uppercase N will stand for north is always the same direction. I'm going to allow you to scribe on the sheet. So everyone, you should be able to see your cursors. Right now, I see all your cursors. Move to the side and let John type in. And John, you can adjust the color. So if you can, type in it in black. You've got a type tool on the side. Take your time. We're going to get to know these tools. You've got a type tool on the side where you've got your pencil. If you click on the top, right, there's a pencil. You should have a bunch of options. One of them is a T. That's the text tool. And 3 cases below it, you've got a color icon. That also allows you, if you click on it, to choose another color. So try to choose the color black and use your type tool to type in N. And then when you're ready, scribe that on the sheet of assertion. You kind of have to click and drag the space. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Thank you, John. All right, so John has now, and I can zoom in, right? That'll make it larger. John has now scribed, and that's the term that we're borrowing from Peirce. He scribed N. And we take N to mean, and we've agreed to that convention, north is always the same direction. Now, John could have used whatever. He could have used D, right, for direction. He could have used whatever. He could have just used an X. He could have drawn a smiley. It really doesn't matter. This is a symbol. And because he scribed it, it's a true claim. All right? I'd like someone else to volunteer. So if you want to volunteer, say yes. Another volunteer. Someone who's not John. And we're going to have to play together, so be brave, all right? So no worries. And remember what happens in this class if you make a mistake. We all learn, remember? No worries about making mistakes. So Arjun, could you also make a small claim in the chat bar that we can all take as true? So, right, take the time to think about it. Something really dumb and simple that we can guarantee we can all agree is a true claim. The sky is blue. That's terrific. Arjun, do you want to assign a letter for that, an uppercase letter? Give me that in the chat bar. B. That sounds great. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go back to the scale that we were before. I'm going to activate the ability for you to write. So, Arjun, go on the sheet there. If you've got a hand, click on the hand. If you've got a pencil, click on the pencil. You should have a writing tool. grab yourself the writing tool, put it at black, and write B wherever you want. And when you write, you kind of have to drag yourself a little box that'll fit whatever you intend on writing. I have a little experience typing this stuff out, so I've learned the hard way the ins and outs of this big blue button stuff. Perfect. All right, I'm going to stop. Beautiful. All right, so what we have on the sheet of assertion now are two claims. It doesn't matter where they're written, right? It doesn't matter. And once again, same thing I said about John's claim applies to Arjun's claim. Actually, is this John's claim? Well, strictly speaking, no. This is no longer John's claim. This is a claim. Once you put it on the sheet of assertion, this is really important. It's not yours, right? It's ours. We all agreed to it. It's there, and it's all ours. It's just a claim. So N stands for north is always the same direction. B stands for the sky is blue. Terrific. Now, I'm allowed to do certain things with these. One of the things I'm allowed to do is I could just drag them around. So I imagine this is my little red dot here. You can imagine I could kind of move things around independently of one another, or all of them around. But that's not a big deal. It's just a cosmetic thing. It doesn't warrant a permission in its own right, but I am allowed to do that, right? Just like I'm allowed to kind of zoom in and zoom out. If I zoomed out, I could zoom out as far back as I want. It would still be there. If the distance between the N and the B was 57 light years, it really wouldn't make a difference. Right now, depending on the screen, it really doesn't make a difference how far apart they are. They're jointly apprehended. And the mere fact that they're jointly apprehended is taken to mean that what we have on the sheet of assertion right now is not just one claim, but two claims. So what we have is one claim that's claiming two parts, right? We're saying right now on the sheet of assertion, we're saying that north is always the same direction, and the sky is blue. This is what we call a compound claim, right? And notice that there's an and there, and the and is not a separate sign. It's the mere fact that they're there. Now, I am allowed a certain permission, and when you want to erase things, what you do is you go for your pencil, you grab the pencil, you choose white as a color, and you use the fattest pencil you can. So you use the tool for the fattest pencil. I'm allowed to do the following thing. If we agree that north is always the same direction, and we agree that the sky is blue, do we agree that the claim, the compound claim, and I'm going to write it in the chat bar, right? The sky is blue and north is always the same direction. The claim I've put in the chat bar, the whole claim, the sky is blue and is always the same. Do we agree that that's a true claim? What I just typed in the chat bar? If you agree, type in agree. So the individual parts of the claim were true, and the whole claim itself, the whole compound claim is true. All right. I'm now going to manipulate, because actually what we have on the graph right now on the sheet of assertion is the claim that Mark, myself, typed in the chat bar, right? It's represented there. I am entitled to do the following thing. Look at what I'm going to do. I'm entitled to do this. Let me undo so you can see that again. I'm entitled to do the following. Yeah, Ariana writes, the compound claim is just connecting two true claims. That's exactly right. Yeah, it has multiple parts. Yeah, you could divide it into the parts that we saw coming from John and Arjun. Terrific. And sometimes you have to, if I ever use jargon from logic that I haven't clarified, just call me on it and I'll clarify it for you. It might happen on occasion. I'm trying to make this make sense to even people who haven't taken logic. So what you have right now are two claims. I'm entitled to do the following. I can erase one of the claims, right? Remember, let's go back just 1 second. What was the goal that we just read? The goal that we just read was we want to make sure that we never go from the true to the false, right? So let me just underline that so we're 100% clear of what's going on, right? If you look here, right, all that we have to do is to avoid the danger of transforming the true into the false. And by a permission, we mean a certain transformation under certain circumstances under the ground that such a transformation can never transform anything true into anything false. All right, so let's go back. We had two claims on the board, right? We had the claim N. That means the north is always the same direction. We had the claim B. The sky is blue. We all agreed that this entire thing is true. If this is true, this entire thing is true, what do I end up with if I decide to erase one of them? So let's say I decide to erase this. What am I left with? A truth or a falsehood? Type in the chat bar, truth or falsehood? Agreed. Agreed. Notice I could have erased also this. If I erase this, what am I left with? A truth or a falsehood? A truth once again. So the move of erasing one of these components doesn't take me from a truth to a falsehood. It always takes me from a truth to a truth. And this move, right, of erasing, I'm going to zoom in, right? This move of erasing is called, and it has a really, really dumb name, it's called erasure. It's called erasure. I'm going to type in the name. Actually, we can go back to our Peirce reading, and we can tick that box, right? So let me go back to our one page that we had skipped last week. That's going to be the focus of all of today's class, right? There are 5 permissions. The permission that we just looked at is called erasure. And erasure says the following: an evenly enclosed graph, that is one that's on an unshaded surface, may be erased. Because remember, when we cut a space, I'm going to, for visual clarity, deem the cut space shaded, right? So erasure just says an evenly enclosed graph, that is one that's on an unshaded surface, may be erased. And the justification for that is it always takes us from a truth to a truth. If you said both things, surely you can say one of those things. And that rule is called erasure. So the way things are going to move, the way things are going to work in this class today is we're going to make interventions together, right? People have written down claims. The claims don't belong to them, right? And you're entitled to invoke a rule. So what I would do, for instance, is I'm going to type in the chat bar erasure. So now I'm signaling to everyone in the group. You can all see, can everyone see I wrote erasure in the chat bar? Say yeah if you saw that. All right, cool. So I'm signaling to all of you that I'm about to employ a permission, right? Which permission I'm going to employ? I'm going to employ erasure. Erasure allows me to do the following things. It allows me to, if I wanted, delete the whole bloody thing. That could also be erasure. I can always shake the Etch-a-Sketch and get back to the sheet of assertion we started with. If it was fine to start with, it's fine to end with. It's fine. You can always decide to swipe the whole slate clean. I can do that. I can also decide to say, I invoke erasure and do this. And I can also say, I evoke erasure and I do this. In all of those instances, I never end up with a falsehood. I always end up with the truth. I never transform a falsehood. I never transform a truth into a falsehood. That's the first of our 5 permissions. Is that clear, everyone? Is erasure clear? If it's clear, type clear. If you have a question, type your question. And questions are welcome. Like, we want to understand these because we'll be using them. There's only 5, but we really want to understand them. And part of the understanding, obviously, will come with practice as we use them. I know Ariana's typing something, so we'll let Ariana type because I want to take it step by step. Ariana says, so if one claim is false, you should erase that to get the true claim alone on the sheet of assertion. Well, the truth or falsehood of the N and the B has to do with checking out into the world. So ascertaining and verifying whether or not empirically the sky is blue, that has to do with checking. For instance, if I remove my goggles right now and I look at the sky, it's actually gray. So if you index this to my current circumstances, the claim that the sky is blue turns out to be false. But we took it as true. We keep our goggles on and we don't get to check. We're only concerned with whether or not we can transform alleged truths into more truths, right? Whether or not they're true, that's a question of verification, and we suspend that the moment we put goggles. Logic is not science, right? It's something else. We're not actually going to check for that. But that's why I took things that we all agreed were true, right? And so if they're both true, and notice the if they're both true, then you won't end up with a falsehood by manipulating them in the way that I said. Ariane, does that make sense? Cool. And Reese writes, erasure is always permitted in at least some sense. Yeah, you can delete all. That's exactly right, Reese. It's the delete all. You can, if you want, delete all. That's always a thing. And you can think about it, like when we opened the space, Reese, when we stepped in, right, we had nothing. And suppose we've completed an exercise of deliberation and we say, let's start again. We don't need to exit and come back into the sheet of assertion. We don't need to take off our VR gears and do again. We can just use erasure to wipe the slate clean and start again. It's okay, we got clarity on that issue. Can we move to the next issue? Like, let's discuss abortion. And then we start putting premises and trying to draw conclusions. Reese, does that make sense? Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. You can do the delete all. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Okay, we had, I'm going to maintain the claims that we had earlier, and we're going to keep the convention of writing them in black. Let's say that north is always the same direction. Could you, in the same spirit as we did a moment ago, write down a small claim that we can all agree is manifestly false? Not self-contradictory, but false. Just flat out false. Trees are human beings too. Amazing. Thank you, Reese. Reese, what do you want to, you get to pick a symbol for it. Pick an uppercase letter. T, agreed. That's a nice choice. All right, so trees are humans. We all agree that that's false. I'm not going to double check with the community. I think that that's fine. Reese, you want to have a go, and could you please put the negation of that claim on our graph right now? So use the tools in black. You've got a little circle tool that you can drag. So at the top, you've got a pencil, a type tool, and some shapes. Pick the circle. Make sure it's black. And if you want to undo, there's one undo button. So the little arrow, if you want to change something, right, you can always undo it. So take your time. There's no rush. Grab yourself your little oval shape. Drag yourself a cut. And we're not going to shade our cuts, but cool. All right. Thank you, Reese. And you can use the, when you do your circles, you can adjust the thickness of the line. So there's an option with a little dot right beneath that will adjust the thickness of the line. No problem, no problem. And it's really, this is just cosmetic, right? So for instance, what we want to aim for is something that would look like this, right? Like you make it like an oval over here, let's say, and then you type in T, right? But essentially what Reese did was just fine, right? So just for cosmetic reasons, I'm going to change that right now, but it's no big deal. Actually, let me just go back to what Reese did, right? So Reese did this. And again, that's really, in this system, it makes no difference. You could have the color stuff. The only problem is the more complicated systems actually are color-coded. So we wouldn't want to begin to hint at those. But next time, just fine-tune those tools, no big deal. And you're learning on the go, so it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, no big deal. So what do we have on the board right now? Well, if I had to type it out, it would be one long claim. It would be the following. It would be north is always the same direction, right? North is always the same direction. And the sky is blue. And trees are not humans. This is what it would mean. So what I've got in the chat bar right now, north is always the same direction, and the sky is blue, should be is, not if, and the sky is blue, and trees are not humans. That's what we have represented in the existential graphs right now. Do we all agree that the claim I just typed in the chat bar is true? That whole claim is true? We all would nod yes to that? Like if someone sat you down and said, do you agree that north is always the same direction and the sky is blue and trees are not humans? We would all nod yes to that? Yeah, so that's a true claim. And it's a true claim that involves a negation. The negation is that trees are not humans. Right? To say that trees are humans would be just T. And when we cut out a space and we say the trees are not humans, right? That's negating it. I'm going to now invoke a rule. So I'm going to write erasure in the chat bar. Look at me. I'm going to use erasure. Here I go. I'm setting myself up. We don't have an eraser as a tool. So what I'm going to use is the pencil at its fattest thickness with white. Look at what I'm going to do. I can do that. Oopsie. Why is it not doing it? Let me just try that again. It's not erasing it. Reese, you wrote something indelible. I don't know. Do I have not the permission according to this software to erase your stuff? Because Reese created it. What about this one? I can erase that one. Why? This is so strange. Well, the hell with that. Look at what I want to do. I'm going to erase all that. I can do that. Now, what do we have on the board right now? What does that say? Suppose I erased it. I'll figure out my erasure issue in a moment. What do I have on the board right now? What's that saying? North is always the same direction. Now, we've agreed that that was true, right? Well, notice what we did. I was able to transform a complicated true claim, a compound proposition that said north is always the same direction and the sky is blue and trees are not humans. And I can infer from that north is always the same direction. That was, again, a truth. And I extracted from a truth. And I can do that. And that's, once again, a manifestation of the permission erasure. And I wanted to show you a case of erasing a cut. I erased the negation. I erased the whole claim. Now, notice this is important. Here's what I cannot do. All right? So I'm going to show you what I cannot do with erasure. This is why I brought this up. Oh, my God, this is too fat. That's not what I meant. Let me give myself a better cut. There you go. And I'm going to put over here T. What does this graph say right now in normal English? So if you had to read this graph, what's it saying? And everyone's doing well, by the way. This is going like splendidly. The more people volunteer and play along, the better. North is always the same direction, and trees are not human beings. Agreed. Now, to be clear, if I invoked erasure, I could decide to just do this as well. If I inferred from the previous graph, this graph, what I would end up with is trees are not human beings, which is, again, a truth. So I could do that. I can also decide to do this. Let me erase the whole thing. I can do that. What I'm left with is north is always the same direction. So I went from a truth to a truth. Here's what I cannot do. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. What does this mean in English? This whole claim, this whole compound claim, this compound proposition. It means, you got it. It means, so Cameron, Ariana, Reese, thank you. It means north is always the same direction and trees are humans. What Ariana wrote, is that true or false? The whole thing Ariana just wrote, is it true or false? It's false. So you can see why you're not permitted to do that, right? You can't use your erasure for this because it would transform a truth into a falsehood. And the whole system is designed so that as to allow you to extract further truths from truths, but to never veer into falsehood. So long as you keep plopping truths on there, the permissions will never take you into the realm of error, right? And so you can't do that. Is that clear, everyone? Why you can't just erase the cut around it? If it's clear, type in clear. If you have a question, type your question. And we're doing amazing, by the way. This is like a wet dream of logic for me. Everyone's playing along well. And these tools are not the most sophisticated, but sophisticated enough for us to have some fun. Here's another misuse of erasure. I can't do this. What does this mean? it means, I mean, give it your best shot. Like it means north is always the same direction and not, right? Not what, right? Not's not a thing. Not's not a claim, right? No one can say just not. You know, I negate, right? Maybe when you're high and you're taking a course in existentialism, you can wave your hand around and say, I negate. But look, seriously, right? You have to negate something, right? You have to deny something. And so you can't use erasure just to wipe out the T inside the cut. You cannot do that, right? So just to be clear, that would be a misuse of the permission. Nothing is not nothing. Nothing is nothing, Andrew. Nothing is nothing, right? You run into problems metaphysically if otherwise, right? So is that clear, everyone? You can't just erase the cut, and you can't just erase the T. That's a misuse of erasure, but you can, if you want, erase the entire proposition that says not T. And you can also decide to say the hell with the whole thing. If it's clear, type in clear. And Reese writes, is there a specific principle for when an erasure cannot be used, or is it case-by-case basis? No, this is the principle. You can always use it apart from those instances I just showed you. That's it. Yeah. Nothing is going to be case by case. It's very, very principled. All right, cool. So now let's have some fun with some other permissions. So we have 1 down, 4 to go. So let me just kind of zoom out here and go back to our sheet, right? A jam-packed sheet, which I couldn't have done justice to, right? 1 down, 2 to go. So we did erasure. Amazing. Good. 1 down, 4 to go. Let's go back into our VR gear. Trees are not humans. Let's go back to that claim for a second. Trees are not humans. Let me write that over here. There we go. And now I can skip. We all know what those stand for. Trees are not humans. This is what that says. All right. So what does this say? I'm going to say this now. What does this say? Trees are not humans, and trees are not humans. Exactly, right? Now, notice we read these things from the inside out, right? So when I say the trees are not humans, I'm working from always the positive space of assertion. So I'm saying it's true that trees are not humans, right? I can say it's true that trees are not humans, and if that's been scribed once, right? If that was done once, I'm entitled to just say it again. If you put it on there once, I'm entitled to put it on there twice. If we've agreed that it's there once, right, I'm entitled to iterate that. That's going to be the rule of iteration. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to use the rule of iteration, right, iteration. And I'm invoking the rule right now. So everyone see the rule iteration in the chat bar. And I've invoked iteration to take whatever is already on there, right, and put it again. I can just put it again. It's like copy paste. I can just invoke the copy paste rule, right? And I can just go ahead and do this. And I can do this as many times as I want, right? In all sorts of ways, like the space, the location, the size of it, doesn't matter. I'm still invoking iteration, iteration, iteration. And I'm not making this into a falsehood. If it was true that humans aren't trees, then it's true that humans aren't trees and humans aren't trees and humans aren't trees. That's the easy version of iteration. It's really dumb, but it's a permission. We're allowed to do it. I will not veer into falsehood by saying the same thing again, right? I'm not going to have a problem. Is that clear, everyone? That's the rule of iteration. If it's clear, type in clear. If you have a question, ask your question. There's a little more to iteration, and we'll get to that in a second, right? Cool. Now, iteration is going to be a little trickier than that. And I'm going to go back to iteration. I don't know if I should do this now or later. I'm wondering whether I should do this now or later. Iteration is a little trickier. It allows you to do something else. So let me set this up just so that I know exactly where I'm going. Hold on just one second. Iteration allows you also, let's go back to the our one sheet. All right, let me go back here. When we go to our one sheet here and we look at iteration, iteration is going to be the hardest rule of the 5. So I'm just going to go while we're still fresh as much as possible. What does iteration say? It says any graph scribed on any area can be iterated either on the same area or within any nested cuts. This is the part that's going to be a little more difficult because we don't understand yet what is a nested cut, right? Ariana says, can you put a bunch of T's in one circle? Would it mean differently? Great question, Ariana. So I'll answer that question and we'll unfold this. So just any graph scribed on any area can be iterated either on the same area. So part of your answer is right here, on the same area. So Ariana, that's an amazing question. Let's go back here. Suppose, Ariana, that trees are not humans, right? Does it make any difference if I do this? I say, for instance, it's not the case that trees are not humans, trees are humans and trees are humans. You can totally do that. On the same area, you can totally do that. So Ariana, iteration allows you to do this. Yeah, great question, great question. Right. Now, iteration allows you, in addition, to do the following. Iteration allows you to iterate. You could call it sideways iteration. What we've done is sideways iteration. Like I'm iterating these sideways, right? Still always on the same spot, on the same area. I've iterated this entire graph sideways. The not T, right? I've iterated it. Keep iterating, copy pasting, right? So long as you're in the same area. So I've iterated this entire not T. I've iterated here as a not T over here. I can do that. But I can also do the following. So let me just pause before I do something more complicated. So far, can everyone see this sideways iteration? So long as you're on the same plane, you can keep copy pasting. If that's clear, write clear. If everyone can see that, say yeah or something like that. If you're not clear, just tell me. Cool. All right. Iteration also allows you to do the following. You can iterate within any nested cut. A nested cut is the sort of thing that we need to understand. It's a little more complicated. So let's practice what nesting is. Let's look at this diagram here. Here's a diagram, and I've used shading here to make it simpler. This is saying something. What does P, R, Q, and S stand for? Who knows? Who cares? Let's assume that someone knew what they meant. We wrote this down, and this is a complicated set of claims, right? It's saying, and you can read this all sorts of ways, it's saying S and not P, and it's not the case that R and not Q, right? It's like, this is what it's saying. It's saying all of those things at once. And remember, existential graphs is not linear. So this, unlike English that starts from left to right, we will read from the outside in, but there's nothing that mandates that you have to read, let's say, this first or whatever. But it's saying it is true that it is not the case that R and not Q, and it's not the case that P and S, right? So if I write this in English, let me just write this in English as a long sentence, right? It would be something like S and not P, and it is not the case that, and I'm going to open brackets just to put this a little more clearly, R and not Q. What I've written in the chat bar, that's what the graphs mean right now. S and not P, and it's not the case that R and not Q. Does everyone see how the graphs relate to what I typed in the chat bar? If you can see it, type in yes. If you can't, tell me. We'll go over it just so that we see what it means. It's not super important for now, but you should be able to understand what this means. Cool. Am I losing? Because I'm hearing from a few people. I want to hear back from everyone. Everyone following along? Because if I'm losing you and you're like, I'm not hearing from you, it'll suck. You'll spend this entire class falling behind, right? So Sundish, Sonia, folks I'm not hearing from, Chen Hong, everyone's good? Following along, you're there, everything's good? Because remember, I can't, if I was a teacher, I'd be like vitally reading your bodily language, right? So cool, all right. It's really, really important to hear that I hear from you. So notice what I've done here. because I have the luxury of using Photoshop, not just Big Blue Button, which obviously is a little more fancy. I'm shading the area. It just makes it a little easier to see, right, that we can go from an assertion space to a negation space to reverting back to an assertion space, right? One of the things that we want to do is we want to understand what nesting is. Well, one way of understanding it, as a prelude to understanding it, is imagine that this has relief. Imagine that this is layered, like you can imagine if you're walking on the ground, like if I'm walking on the ground right now, right, and I'm heading towards R, so this is me and I'm walking, doop, 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 I'm gonna fall. Can everyone see that? Like a 3D thing? Like if I keep walking towards R, I'm gonna fall. To get to R, I'll just fall down a cliff, an abrupt cliff, right? And so you can imagine these, every time you negate, you can think of you're going down one level. Kind of like if you've seen when they mine or when there's a mining operation, it's a quarry and they're mining a mountain for minerals or something like that, they dig in steps. You can imagine this is like there's a, when you negate, it's like you're going down one level, right? And if you negate that, then you're going down yet another level and so on. Nesting is going to be a situation where you can iterate anytime sideways. So S, you can put another S anywhere here, or anywhere where it would be going down, not up. So I can put an S, if anywhere I go down, I could put an S here. I could put the claim S here. I can also put the claim S here because I would be going down, right? Anywhere sideways, I can iterate S, or I can iterate S anywhere where I would go down a level or more. So long as I'm going down, not up, I can iterate. So that's the second version of the iteration. Let's practice that to see if we understand. Let's imagine that we have, you can see here, little ladders, right? Ladders can be climbed up or they can be climbed down. According to the rule of iteration that I just told you, does iteration allow you to climb up or down? What's the one thing that the permission of iteration allows you to do? To climb down or to climb up? Climb down, good. And only down, you can't climb up, right? Iteration only allows you to climb down. So let's assume, for instance, that each of these propositions is represented by, because there's a lot of propositions happening. In a thing like this, there's lots of things happening. Let's assume that each of these is represented by a little animal. So for instance, the animal, the dog over here, the dog is claiming that P. Well, it turns out that the frog disagrees. The frog is claiming that not P, right? So they're making different claims. The dog claims that P. The frog comes along and disagrees and claims that not P. The monkey's claiming that S. What is the pig claiming according to this? The pig's making a claim. What's the pig claiming? Just so if we understand this bizarre notation I'm making for pedagogical reasons. Actually, the pig is claiming R. Strictly speaking, look, the pig is on that level, right? The pig is just claiming R. Who's negating the pig? Who's disagreeing with the pig? There's another animal that's disagreeing with the pig. That takes another leverage and say, I think you're wrong. I disagree, not R. The fox. The fox. The bee's actually at a lower level. The bee doesn't even know what's going on, right? The bee's at another level. The fox is disagreeing with the pig. What's the fox negating? The fox is negating this entire thing, right? The fox is negating that. Let's imagine this claim, R and not Q. Almost there, Ariana. You almost got it. Yeah. So if I type R and not Q, right? Let me type R and not Q, right? R and not Q, that's what the pig claims. The fox negates what I just typed, R and not Q. The fox negates that. So there's all sorts of sub-claims here that are embedded in one another, right? And what I want to do now is I just want you to understand the topography of these diagrams. So let's ask the following question. Can what the dog asserts, so the dog's over here, so I've put the P in blue. So that's what the dog asserts. What does the dog assert, by the way, letter-wise? P. That's what the dog asserts. I need to pee. That's what he says. Can what the dog asserts be iterated to where the monkey is without climbing up a ladder. So let's do it together at first. Can I move this sideways according to iteration? Just sideways, stay on the plane. Let's just go for that for a second. Does iteration allow me to just iterate this, make another copy here, just on the same plane? So the dog said, I need to pee, and he said it twice. He said, I need to pee and I need to pee. It's like, he could totally do that. Iteration allows you to do this. But now the question is, does what the dog assert, can it be iterated to where the monkey is? So the monkey's over here on this white plane over here, right? Can this P be copy pasted where the monkey is on that plane without climbing a ladder? And the correct answer is no. Because you see that if we wanted to paste this way, we don't need to climb any ladder up or down. There's no ladders required. But if we wanted to write P over here, where the monkey is, we'd have to climb a ladder, and we'd have to climb up a ladder. We'd have to go like this, climb up the ladder, and then put our P over here, right? And we can't do that because we're climbing up, right? Somebody writes, is this kind of like the same logic used to nest loops and program? Maybe, but I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure. That's a cool question that I would have to answer when I'm not busy spinning the plate of teaching. I don't know. That's that. Not maybe. The cool question. Keep that on the shelf. Yeah. But so there you have it. We're climbing up a ladder. Can everyone see that the dog, if he wanted to go pee next to the go pee next to the monkey, would have to climb up a ladder? Can everyone see that? I can even zoom in a little bit so we can see it. If you can see that, write clear. I want to hear back from everyone. And if I've lost you, write lost. So Owen and whoever else is brave enough to tell me they're lost, this will probably get a little clearer for the moment, but I'm going to give this one little wash. Owen, can you rub your hand on the screen right now and imagine the bumps up and down? Can you feel the texture? Up and down, what would be down, what would be up? Can you read that 3D space for me with your hand? Can you feel that? As I said, tactile, right? Cool. So like if you were to rub your fingers here, you'd have to go up this little thing and go here. Can you see my red dot, Owen? So yeah, if you can see my red dot. All right, so notice if I want to copy sideways, right? If I just want to iterate P sideways, and I'm just going to use a blue P here just so that we're staying with this, and I'm going to use there you go, like P, right? P. For this new P that I just put over here, Owen, did I have to use any ladder? Yes or no? Ladder or no ladder? No ladder. If I want to put P over here, do I have to use a ladder or no ladder? Okay, did I have to climb or descend the ladder? So if you climb, you can't use that for iteration. That's the idea. So the question is, can you do this by iteration? Can this first, let's call this P1. Cool, all right, neat. Let's call this P1. P1 is permitted, we're talking about permissions. P1 is permitted by iteration. P2 is not permitted by iteration. So this would be wrong. This is a misapplication of the inference rule. So what the dog asserts, can it be iterated where the monkey is without climbing up a ladder? The answer is no, right? It cannot be asserted where the monkey is without climbing a ladder. Perfect, perfect. Everybody else except Owen that was too shy to tell me they were lost. Did that help? P1's permitted, P2's not permitted because you climbed a ladder. You can only go down a ladder. And we got more examples to go, right? Wouldn't going down create another negation? Not sure, Andrew. Hold that thought. I don't think that's, we're no going down. No, we're not adding, like, no, forget that. Let's just move on. We got more examples, Andrew. It'll fall into place. Remember, once you have all 5 permissions, you'll understand with this stuff, but we're not adding negations or anything. Yeah, we're just moving propositions and iterating other tokens of it. We're replicating them. Copy paste. All right. Let's ask another question. What does the monkey assert? Tell me in the chat bar. What does the monkey assert? What propositions does it assert? What proposition does it assert? It asserts S. Can what the monkey asserts be iterated or copy pasted to where the dog is, right? Where's the dog? The dog is the one asserting P over here. So just as a reminder, everyone, this is where the dog is, right? Can what the monkey asserts be copy pasted to where the dog is without climbing up a ladder? The correct answer is yes. Correct answer is yes. So let's try that. We can do sideways iteration. Let's call this S1. S1 is permitted. Do we agree? Ariana, I'll go to that in just a second. S1 is permitted. If you agree, say agree. If that's a permission, that's the good. It's the sideways iteration. It's the dumbest version. You stay on your level. You can always say it again. Say it again. You can always say it again. You can always say it again. See, I'm saying it again. What about S2? Well, look at S2. S2 is in a nested cut, right? That is, you can get there by going down. You don't need to go up, so you're allowed to do S2 as well. So S2 and S1 are both allowed. Ariana writes, iteration allows you to go that way, right? Yeah, it totally allows you to go to S2. Yeah, so everything's fine here. These are good uses of iteration. These are good uses of iteration. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. I'm going to write another one here. S3, is that permitted or not permitted? Totally permitted. I'm not climbing up a ladder. I'm either going sideways or down. So long as it's sideways or down, you're fine. I'm going to write S4 here. Permitted or not permitted? In virtue of iteration. Totally permitted. Totally permitted. Let's go here. S5, permitted or not permitted? Reese says S2 and 3 seem like they will create. It wouldn't actually, Reese. They wouldn't. So they wouldn't. So the intuition, your intuitions are failing you on that one. It wouldn't create a falsehood. All right, and we'll unpack all of that in a second. Good. Let's practice some more. You're getting the hang of this. Can what the monkey asserts be iterated to where the B is without climbing up a ladder? What the monkey asserts is S. Could it be iterated to where the B is without climbing up a ladder? What does the B say, by the way? Just so we clarify what the B is asserting. What's the B scribing? B is saying something. The B is saying Q. Can S get to Q by only going sideways and down? So without climbing a ladder. Yeah, you got it. The answer is yes. It would look like this if I had to do the trail of breadcrumbs. Down. That sideways. Down. Iterate S. Can everyone see that? Type yes if you can see it. I want to hear from everyone. And again, if you're lost, type in lost. It's kind of a game right now, right? Just get the hang of the levels. Just see it in levels. See it in levels. We'll get the bird's eye view again. We won't always be seeing it at an angle. Like Google Earth used to have this cool angle view, by the way, that allowed you to see the buildings kind of at an incline. It was really cool. So kind of what we're doing with the graphs right now. We're seeing them at an incline, right? And you can think of each of these layers, I won't go into the metaphysics of it, but as a possible world, right? There's a world in which P might be the case, and so the dog might assert it, but you know, the monkey knows better, so he's at a higher vantage and he negates it and so on. All right, let's do it again. Can what the monkey asserts be iterated to where the pig is without climbing up a ladder? So where's the pig? The pig is over here. Can what the monkey asserts be iterated to where the pig is without climbing up a ladder? Cool. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It's kind of like a game, right? All right. Can what the frog asserts, and notice what does the frog say? What does the frog say? What does the frog say? It says not P. The frog, notice I've circled it in blue here. That's what the frog says. It says, hey, I understand what you're saying, dog, but you're wrong. Dog, you are wrong. Not pee. It's not the case to pee, right? No, you don't need to pee. Your bladder ain't that full, right? The frog. Did I say? Yeah, cool. No worries, no worries. So the frog, did I say fox or frog earlier? Did I mess up, Ariana? That was my bad. So go for what's written on the screen if I was at variance. Yeah, cool, no problem. Can what the frog asserts be iterated to where the pig is? So where's the pig? What's the pig saying? Let's just get clear on that. What's the pig saying? The pig's saying that, can what, and this is going to be an interesting one, not P. Can I drag this entire not P going sideways and down, but never climbing up? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Notice what the frog said was the entire thing, Owen. So watch this. That's why it's important to clarify that. The frog says this entire thing. If I were to do a sideways iteration, what would it look like here, Owen? What would I have to write? So let me just let Owen write this out. Owen, could you please write on this sheet right now a sideways iteration of what the frog says? Owen, try that out. A sideways iteration, just sideways, a sideways copy paste. In any color, frankly, I don't care at this stage, but it's all cool. Take your time, there's no rush. I know it's stressful when you're on the spot. You take your time. We all want to see that happen. Owen, can I close the thing? You tell me when you're done. Type in the chat bar when you're done. Cool. All right. So color notwithstanding, do we all agree that Owen correctly did a sideways iteration over here? That was perfectly fine. Color notwithstanding. So Owen correctly used iteration. He's allowed to do this, right? If I were to do now an iteration inside a nested cut, right? I would go down here, go down here, go down here. And what would I write? Well, what I would write is not P. That's what I would drag over here. Not P. Not P is what I would write. I would drag the whole thing. The frog says not P. So Andrew, watch out. The frog says not P. The frog doesn't say P. That's what the dog says. The frog says not P. His graph is the one that Owen just wrote here in red. So just as Owen correctly iterated this sideways, the correct iteration of that would be over here on the same level as the pig, because that's what we're asking, right? Can we drag and copy paste what the frog said? And the frog said not P. Can we drag this? So let's call this my not P in blue over here. So what I'm circling over here, did I have to climb up a ladder, yes or no? Did I have to climb up a ladder to get here? That's right. I just went sideways and down, right? So I didn't have to climb up a ladder. So that's a permitted use of iteration. I iterated the not P, the graph not P that the frog asserted, and I put it either sideways or down. Owen did my sideways, right? And I did the down one. Owen writes, dog needs to climb up, frog doesn't. Yeah, the dog would have to climb up. Beautiful, Owen. So what Owen just said is great. The dog needs to climb up. The frog doesn't. So let's look at that carefully. If the dog wants to land P over here, the dog has to climb up. Dog can't do this, right? The dog can't do this because the dog would have to climb up a ladder. Does everyone see that? Tell me yes if you can see that. The dog would have to climb up a ladder to do the P, to put a P on the level of the pig. But the not P can go sideways or down, sideways or down. Sundish writes, does the dog move with the frog's iteration down? Not, well, the dog stands for P. The P, the not P is, the P is still in the negation. So yeah, Sundish, the P moves along with it. When the frog moves, the frog doesn't just move the cut. He moves the content of the cut. Somdish, is that clear? Well, listen, when Owen did this over here, right, he didn't just move the cut. He moved the content of the cut as well. You can't have a contentless cut, right? That makes no sense. So this was a correct use, right? So we can take what the frog asserts, which is not P, and iterate it to where the pig is. Let me just try another fun iteration here, right? Remember, the sideways iterations are not problematic, right? They consist in just going sideways. So this would be a sideways iteration of what the frog says. This would be a nested iteration of what the frog says. Let me just put this here. This is permitted. Oopsie, I'm going to try to do my cut a bit better. There you go. This is permitted. Tell me in terms of the iteration permission for where we can only go sideways or down, is this one permitted? Yeah, it is allowed, perfectly allowed. Again, sideways or down is fine for iteration. Sideways or down, sideways or down. So you move your fingers, right? You drag this entire thing. And remember, what the frog says isn't P. What the frog says is not P. You take that graph, you either slide it sideways or you slide it down. This is kosher. So let me just put in green here, a check mark every time it's kosher. This is kosher. This is kosher. This is kosher. All of those are fine. Those are all just fine. Can everyone see that? If that's clear, type in clear. If you're lost, type in lost. This is the hardest part of the system. Once we get that, everything else is going to be smooth sailing, or at least smoother sailing. The rest is going to be really fun. Then we're going to have a really fun time with it. I'm glad we're going to get that out of the way. Cool. Let's do a little more practice. What does the cow assert? What's the cow's graph? What is it saying? It's making a claim. What's the cow saying? You got it, Andrew. It's saying not Q. The cow is saying not Q. Right? Who's saying Q? What animal is saying Q? There's an animal that's there for the Q. Yeah, B. You can imagine for each claim a potential agent backing it. That's the idea, right? So if you're looking at all of these things, for each one, you can imagine a hypothetical person's agreeing to it. No matter what the claim, whether it's true or false, whether you assert it or deny it, you can always imagine someone backing it. And I've created little placeholders of animals for those things. Now let's ask the question, can what the cow asserts, which is the whole not Q, be iterated to where the dog is without climbing up a ladder? So let's do what that would look like and ask ourselves if we had to climb a ladder. What the cow asserts is not Q. Okay, fine. Let's put that over here on the same plane as the dog. This is the not Q. If I want to do that, let's see if I had to climb a ladder. Well, first of all, I go sideways. So far, so good. Then I have to, oh my God, what do I have to do? I have to go up a ladder, which is not allowed. So you press the buzzer. Then I would go sideways. That's fine. And then I would go down, and that's fine. But this move over here, that's bad. I had to go up a ladder. Sideways, up, sideways, down. I had to do an up in there. I can't do this. Can everyone see that? I cannot iterate not Q to where the dog is. So the answer is no. You can't do this. It's not permitted. Can everyone see that? Sideways, up, sideways, down. So I violated the rule. Okay, if you can see that, say yeah. Cool, right? Terrific. And notice that what the cow said was the whole thing, right? Let's do another one. Can what the pig asserts, and the pig asserts R, be iterated to where the B is without climbing up a ladder? By now, I think you're getting the hang of it. So let's put this over here, R. Can I copy paste this sideways or down? Can I do this without climbing up a ladder? Yes or no? Yeah. So this is permitted. Iteration permits you to do that. Iteration permits you to copy paste sideways or down a level. Any level, no matter how many levels you want. Sideways or down a level. The fox asserts what? The fox asserts that it's not the case that R and not Q. Can what the fox asserts, actually, let's do a sideways iteration for a moment, just to warm us up. I'm going to sideways iterate on the same plane what the fox asserts, just so that we are reminded at another view, if you will, what exactly the fox is asserting. The fox is asserting that it's not the case that R and not Q. We agree that that sideways iteration is permissible, the one I just did in blue right now? Tell me if you agree. That was just a sideways copy-paste. I just copy-paste on the same level, copy-paste on the same level. I said it twice. I said it twice. There's nothing wrong with saying it twice. There's nothing wrong with saying it twice. It's like, cool. Now what about the dog? Where's the dog, right? The dog's over here. Can I do this? So let me just draw this, and then we'll ask ourselves whether or not I can do it. And I'm kind of running out of space, and hopefully this will work, because I think it's going to get a little. Actually, I'm going to use my right tools for this. I'm going to say R here, right? Because I can adjust the shape in Q. Can I do that? Permitted or not permitted? Yeah, I could totally do it. What's the route I had to take it? I had to take sideways and down. Fine. Ariana says, what is the fox trying to say? The fox is trying to say it's not the case that R, but yes, Q or not Q. No. The fox is saying, so let's imagine just for a second, right? Suppose you say this, Ariana. I'm going to write it in purple, Ariana, to answer your question. Ariana, could you imagine yourself in a situation where you say this, someone says this, R and not Q? The records will be sold and the queen will not die. Could you agree to say that? That could be a situation, Ariana. You agree? You said the records will sell and the queen will not die. And I disagree with you. That's what I'm saying. That's what the fox says. All right, there you go. That's all he's saying. Negate whatever that would be. That's it. And the thing in purple right now, by the way, the thing in pink, is that kosher? If I did that, because I did it, is that okay? According to iteration, could I put that on the same plane? Yeah, it's totally fine, right? That was totally cool. I just reset what the fox said, right? So this is perfectly fine, because what did I do? I can go sideways, right, and then down, and I can put it over here. So I can assert the fox gets to copy paste his thing where the dog is. Let me say that again. The fox get to copy paste what he said where on the plane where the dog is. If that's clear, type in clear. If you're lost, say lost. Perfect. In what the B asserts, be iterated to where the pig is without climbing up a ladder. Yes or no? Yeah. I think everyone can see that clearly, right? Because what would that look like? Well, it'd be putting a Q over here. But how do you get to here? Well, I'd have to climb a ladder. Climbing ladders is forbidden. I can't climb a ladder. I can't climb a ladder. So that would be forbidden. So the answer is no, you can't get there without climbing up a ladder. So it's not permitted, it's forbidden. Can everyone see that? Type clear if it's clear, lost if you're lost. And again, I'd rather be the teacher on this and really pile it on thick, because then after that, we'll nail that coffin and we move on, right? Can what the B asserts be iterated to where the monkey is without climbing up a ladder? Yes or no? You got it. No. You'd have to climb 2 ladders, right? Can what the frog asserts be iterated to where the bee is without climbing up a ladder? You're getting the hang of this. Yes, right? The frog asserts not P. Well, I could totally put, right, where the B is, I could totally put not P over here, because that would require me to go sideways, down, and down. That's totally fine. Can what the dog asserts be iterated to where the B is without climbing up a ladder? Yes or no? Nine. Agreed. Agreed. Look at how we're converging on these skills. It's really cool. You're getting the hang of it. All right. Now we can go back to where we were. All right. So let's go back. Logic of the future, my friends. Right. We have 5 permissions. Those permissions are always assured to transform the true into the true. They'll never lead us into falsehood. Now let's go back to iteration for a moment. The iteration inference rule says that any graph scribed on any area can be iterated either on the same area or within any nested cuts. Nested cuts are the ones that are beneath you, like when you they're the ones that you would encompass that would be below you, right? So if you were thinking military strategy, they always say, I've got the high ground, right? They're the ones that are on the low ground compared to you. So you've got the upper hand, you're always on the high ground and you're looking down. The nested cuts are the ones that are beneath you. So now let's have some fun with this, right? Let's go here and let's continue to where we were, all right? Here we are, here we are, here we are. Does everybody remember this? What the heck does this stand for in one sentence? Trees are not humans, right? You don't need more words than that to describe what's going on because it's saying the same thing over and over again. Trees are not humans. All right, I'm going to do something right now. I'm going to type in the chat bar, iteration, and I want all of you to police me. I've chatted iteration. Can everyone see in the chat bar? I've invoked iteration. So I want the whole community to see. I'm raising my hand up and I'm saying, sir, I want to use iteration, please. All right, so you all have seen this. I'm going to now invoke iteration to do something, and you tell me if you permit it. And I'm going to, just for the sake of exposition here, I'm going to put it in blue. Do you permit or not permit what I just did? Perfect. All right, once again, I'm going to invoke iteration. So I type iteration. I'm going to invoke iteration, and I'm going to do the following. Here we go. You permit or not permit what I just did? Perfectly fine, right? What I've done is I've taken one of these graphs and I've gone sideways and down, right? Sideways and down. So I'm perfectly fine. All right, let's start again. Let's say a following claim. We had a claim which was, let's start again, N. Remember who said it, but it doesn't matter. N stood for north is always the same direction. Our false claim was that trees are not humans. So I'm going to put this over here. Trees are not humans, right? Do we all agree that what we have on the graph is the truth? The whole thing is a truth. North is always the same direction and trees are not humans. Type agree if you agree. So we're working from truths. Right? Now, can I, and I'm going to use blue here, can I use iteration? So I'm going to type in an iteration in the chat bar. So I invoke iteration. So you hereby understand that I'm going to use iteration. Can I invoke iteration to do this? Yes, agreed. Correct use of iteration. I'm going to now invoke another inference rule, another permission. Erasure. I've invoked erasure, everyone. So look at, I'm invoking erasure. And I do this. Is this permitted or not permitted? All right. What do we have on the board right now? A truth or a falsehood? It's saying what? Before we assess it, let's be clear on what it's saying. What is this graph saying? Type in the chat bar what this is saying. I'll do it myself as well. Ariana, you're mistaken. Keep going, keep trying. Reese got it. Reese has got it. Actually, I won't type because Reese got it, right? Look at what Reese is saying. Reese says it's not true that north is always the same direction and trees are human, right? If someone said the following, so I'm going to write this in the chat bar, north is always the same direction and trees are humans. What I just typed in the chat bar, is it true or false? What I just typed in the chat bar, would you agree or deny? Would you agree or deny with what I've just typed in the chat bar? The whole thing I just typed in the chat bar. Would you agree or deny? Exactly. You would deny it, right? Well, that's exactly right. So what we say then is, it is true that, right? It's not the case, or I deny that. Sorry, that's a really, really fat arrow. I so didn't want to have that, right? I deny that this. And what does this say? It says what I just put in a chat bar. North is always the same direction and trees are humans, right? There's a truth there, but it's also grafted to a falsehood, right? So if you ask me to buy in both, I'm going to deny, right? So if you ask me, do you buy into that compound assertion, right, which has two parts, including a falsehood, you wouldn't agree to it. Because the only way you're going to agree to it is if both parts are true and one of the parts is false. So you're going to deny that. You're going to deny that. And so what we have on the screen right now, is this a truth or a falsehood? It is the... And again, the denial itself, right? I'm saying it's not the case that. So notice how this is, I'm saying I always work from the outside in. It is true that it is not the case that north is always the same direction and trees are not humans. So notice I'm always working from here, from the sheet of assertion, and I say it is true that it's not the case. Would you agree, Andrew, that it's true that it's not the case? It's true that it's not the case that north is always the same direction and trees are humans, right? So you have a negation, but the negation is true. A negation can be true. Like you agree with that negation. You agree with the denial, right? So we're left with the truth. We're left with the truth. The negation is it's a true negation. You're right to negate this, right? And why is it and trees are humans? Well, because they're jointly shown, right? So Ariana, let's have some fun, right? Just for a second. Let's undo. If I have this, what's inside the cut? What's this inside the cut? What does T stand for? What's inside the cut? The T itself. What does the T itself stand for? Say that again, Ariana. Just the T itself. It's saying trees are humans, right? So the thing here, the T itself, let me put this in color-coded. Let me just redo all of this color-coded because I can do this and that's cool. I'm going to put a T. I'm going to put the T in purple. T says what? Let's go step by step. It says trees are humans. Ariana, you see that? Trees are humans. Cool, trees are humans. What does the thing in blue say? It says it's not the case that trees are humans, right? What does the thing in orange say if I say this? North is always the same direction, and it's not the case that trees are humans, right? The T itself says that trees are humans. Now, we've agreed that trees are humans is worth denying. It makes no difference, right? If I iterate this N over here and I put the N, what I end up having to negate is this entire thing. And this entire thing is what? It's trees are humans and then say whatever you want. You're on the wrong start, right? So let's imagine this. Ariana, I'm going to ask you whether or not you deny or accept what I'm going to put in the chat bar. So let me use a ratio to erase everything else. Folks, and the whole community at large, I want you to tell me whether or not you agree with the sentence I'm going to write. Mark is 10 feet tall and whatever I would fill in. Will you agree to that sentence? Does it matter what else I put in? You can deny it right away. Why? Because there's a falsehood in there. It doesn't matter what I put, right? I put an and it doesn't matter after that what I graph with that and. I just said a falsehood. So you're going to deny that. And you know what? You're right in denying it. it's the true thing to say, right? And Andrew writes, so long as you have one true negated claim, you can put whatever you want in it. That's going to be another inference rule. Yeah, so that's going to be another permission, Andrew. Right? So yeah, so now we have the following permission. And again, we're going to practice even more, right? But we have, Ariana, what's that smiley? Is that like a cat or some weird thing with whiskers? I don't know. It's a lol. All right, cool. Neat. Neat. All right, so we have 2 down, 3 to go, and we're doing great. So the hardest one was iteration, right? We know erasure. So let's just pause. It was your curious face. Cool. All right, so erasure. Do we remember erasure? We're clear enough. An evenly closed graph, that is, anyone on an unshaded or white surface may be erased. Anything on a white surface, you can erase it. So on a white surface, you can wipe it clean, right? Iteration. Any graph scribed on area, and any area can be iterated on the same area or within nested cuts. That's what we just practiced. I'm going to now show you de-iteration. We're going to do that right away. De-iteration is the reverse motion of iteration. Actually, let's read what Peirce says, right? And this is a slight paraphrase of Peirce. Any graph whose occurrence could be the result of iteration may be erased. That's actually word for word, Peirce. I didn't rephrase that at all. Any graph whose occurrence could be the result of iteration may be erased. So let's have a look at a manifestation of that. Let's go over here. And I'm going to now write stuff. And the stuff I'm going to write doesn't matter what it stands for. We all agree it could stand for something. Let's imagine that I have this. I have H, I have G, and I have G. Let's call this, just for the sake of argument, right? Actually, I'm going to redo the colors here just because I can do color coding, so that's cool. Let's call this G purple, and let's call this G blue. Could G purple have been the product of iterating G blue? I'm going to ask again. Could G purple have been the product of iterating G blue? Totally. Yeah, it could have, right? Because G blue can iterate sideways or down. Sideways would be like over here on the same plane, or down. You go down 1 notch, and you got G. De-iteration just is, I'm allowed to undo something that could look like an iteration. It's the reverse motion of iteration. So once you understand iteration, you understand the iteration. So I'm going to invoke the rule of the iteration now. I'm going to say de-iteration. De-iteration. Everyone can see in the chat bar I've invoked the rule. Say yes if you can see that. That's the technical word for the rule, de-iteration. I hereby invoke the rule of de-iteration. And now I want you to tell me whether I apply or misapply it, whether it was, actually, let's just say permitted or not permitted. Permitted or not permitted? Totally permitted. That's the iteration. It's the reverse motion of iteration. It's the undo button of iteration. It doesn't have to have been the product of iteration. So importantly, it's not that you have to have iterated G. So let's imagine, for instance, that you could iterate G. Yeah, Control Z iteration. I like that, Owen. You could iterate G and then invoke iteration to undo it. So I could do the following steps, right? Those are perfectly fine. But you don't have to have it being iterated in order to de-iterate it. The state of play as you find it could look like this. You start with this state of play. The sheet of assertion looks like this, and you're entitled to remove this G. And you're entitled to remove it in terms of what? Well, not erasure, because erasure works on only which surfaces, gray or white? Because remember, this is supposed to be kind of like a gray surface, right? Yeah, erasure only works on the gray surfaces. The white surfaces. So I can use erasure to do this. So let's say I type erasure in the chat bar. I'm about to use erasure. Tell me if I'm allowed to do what I'm going to do now. Tell me if it's permitted. So I've typed in erasure in the chat bar. Can I do this? Permitted or not permitted in virtue of erasure? Reese says it's permitted. I've just to see, everyone can see what I did. I invoked erasure and I erased this blue G. Permitted or not permitted? Totally permitted. Totally permitted. Erasure allows me to erase anything on a white surface. Cool. Yeah, no worries. We'll get in the hang of this. Erasure allows me to iterate anything on a white surface, right? I can do that. Here, could I invoke erasure to erase the G? Would erasure be the permission I invoke to do this? No, because that's a gray area. What permission could I invoke, though, to get rid of this black G? I do have a permission that would allow me to do it. What permission would be that? Could I use? That's right. I can invoke the iteration. I can invoke the iteration and remove this G. Now notice, if I did this, though, let's say I invoke erasure. Permitted or not permitted? I erased the blue G. Permitted or not permitted? I invoked erasure and I did that. All right, so now our graphs are in a new state of play. Can I invoke the iteration to do this now? I got no more G outside my bubble. No, I cannot use iteration anymore. I need at least one replica of it outside in order for me to use the iteration. So the smart thing to do if I want to get rid of both G's is the following sequence. De-iteration first, erasure after. Let me redo that again in slow motion. If I do this, I'm stuck with the G inside the cut. Can everyone see that? If I do this, I'm stuck with the G because I can't use erasure inside a shaded space. I'm stuck like F. It would really suck. And when you're going to play with these during your homework, be mindful of that. So it's really going to be fun, right? Strategically, what I would do is de-iterate the black G, then iterate, then erase the blue G. Is that clear, everyone? If it's clear, type in clear. If you lost, say lost. And notice what we're doing. We're creating signs outside of us in this VR space. We're investing those signs with meaning, and then we manipulate the diagrams to make sure we always end up with truths, that we never transform a truth into a falsehood, right? We have now 3 inference rules. What are those 3 inference rules? I'm going to type them on here. We have erasure, we have iteration, and there's no sequence in which, I mean, obviously it's easier to teach iteration before the iteration. We have de-iteration. We need 2 more. I'm going to do the dumbest one, but so far, erasure, iteration, de-iteration. Let's do 1 more. Let's go back to a claim that someone had made. Let's say N. North is always the same direction. Oopsie. That's a true claim. What does this say? In a chat bar in English, what does this say? Reese writes, it is not the case that it's not true that north is the same direction. Andrew writes, it's not the case that not N. Yeah, and another way of saying it more colloquially would be, it's not true that trees aren't humans. Which is equivalent to saying what? That's equivalent to saying what? What we have on what Reese just wrote, that's equivalent to saying what? More parsimoniously. Sorry, north. Sorry, it's the north thing. It's the north, not the trees. I'm confused. That north is always the same direction. All right, so I'm going to invoke a rule now, and I'm going to write it in the chat bar. Everyone see that? If you can see it, say C. It's called double cut. I want to hear from as many people as possible, just so that I'm sure that even if you're, not ultra active, that you're at least, and we're going to get you more active because we're really going to start testing arguments. All right, so I've invoked double cut. Double cut allows me to do 2 things. It allows me to say, I can remove all of this. Now, importantly, there has to be nothing inside the double cut that I'm removing. Was this permitted or not permitted in virtue of double cut? Was this permitted? I can just remove a double cut. So was this permitted? Yeah, permitted. Make sure there's nothing in the double cut, right? So there has to be nothing inside here. This whole space here, right, which we could shade. You can imagine this could be shaded, and in the homework I'll give you, it would be shaded. Make sure there's nothing here, right? It has to be nothing here in order for me to apply double cut. If there's something, you can't apply double cut, right? You can't apply double cut because it's actually saying a different kind of proposition. So double cut allows you to say, I take all of that and I remove it, right? I'm not going to use the word erase because we have a rule that's called erasure, right? It allows me to erase all of this. So that's one of the ways in which you can apply double cut. I'm going to apply double cut again, right? Double cut. I type it in the chat bar. The community has seen I've invoked an inference rule, and now I'm going to manipulate. And again, it doesn't have to be my claim, right? But I can, for strategic purposes, as in the course of my diagrammatic manipulations, I can do this. I'm entitled to double negate whatever you say. Because I'm still, if I've agreed that it's there on the board and it's true, this is still true, right? I'm entitled to add or remove a double cut. It's still the inference rule double cut. Is that clear, everyone? It's a really easy one. If it's clear, type in clear. If you have a question, ask your question. Cool, and let's read it from the horse's mouth, right? Let's read it from Peirce. Now we have double cut, here it is. The double cut may be inserted around or removed from any graph on any area. So there you go. We've got another one done, right? The double cut. And notice on any area. So for instance, right, let's say I have a situation like this. I'm going to make a graph right now, and I'm going to say, imagine I have a situation that's like this. And earlier we had said that trees aren't humans, right? This is a true claim. Do we agree? This is true. Type in true if you think this is true. Trees aren't humans. T stands for trees are humans. Not that stands for they're not humans. So this is a truth. We want to go from truth to truths. We never want to go from a truth to a falsehood, right? We want to go from gold to gold, never from gold to lead. That's the gold is the gold standard. That's what we want. We never want to denature it into something of lesser worth. We never want to go from gold to lead. All right. Notice I'm going to invoke double cut. So notice I'm typing in the chat bar right now, right? Double cut. And here I go. I'm going to do this. Permitted or not permitted? Totally permitted, right? Notice what I end up with if I were to shade these things. It gets a little harder to track when there's quite a few, right? Gray. Oops, sorry. I need to switch my tools. This was gray, and this is gray. I still end up negating that trees are humans. I go from gray to white to gray. I'm right back to where I started. I'm going to invoke double cut again. Look at me. I go double cut. I type it in the chat bar. The whole community knows I'm about to use double cut. And here I go. I'm going to use it. Look at me use it. Here I go. What am I left with, the truth or falsehood? We had agreed that it is true that trees are humans. Am I left with the truth? Left with the truth. Right back to where I started. Is that clear, everyone? If that's clear, type in clear. You can see all the things you can do with double cut, right? Remove or add a double cut so long as there's nothing in there. Cool. Hey, we got 4 inference rules out of 5. Once we have our 5, we can start testing arguments. It's going to be really cool. Our last one is, if you will, it's going to be the flip side of erasure. Erasure says you can add anything, you can erase anything on a white surface. This next one is going to be called insertion. Insertion. Insertion is the following. So let's imagine I have the following situation. I have the following claim. This claim says that trees aren't humans. The atomic proposition, the smallest propositions that are represented by capital letters always have to be asserted in the affirmative. The negations get factored into the fact that there's a cut, right? So T stands for trees are humans. Cut T stands for it's not the case that trees are humans, right? I can, and this is going to be a shaded space now. We understand this to be a shaded space, this cut. And this is one of the things where I wish I could just kind of select full shapes. but this is a shaded space. This entire thing is a shaded space. On a shaded space, you can insert whatever the hell you want. So on a shaded space, I can decide to say this. On a shaded space, I can decide to say this. On a shaded space, I can decide to say, oopsie, I always forget to thin out my line. I get to say this. Let me just type in something. Right? In which case, now that would revert to being white again here. So let me just clear that up. This would all now be white, just so that we're 100% clear, right? In a shaded space, I can say whatever the hell I want. And that is the rule of insertion. Insertion, right? If it's not the case that trees are humans, then it's not the case that trees are humans and whatever the hell you want. So notice, I'm going to type this in the chat bar so you can see intuitively why this works. It is not the case that trees are humans and ... Do we agree with my claim, irrespective of what I put after? It's not the case that trees are humans, and then it doesn't matter what I put. That's going to be a true claim. Even if I put falsehoods or truths after that. So let me try a version where I say truths. It is not the case that trees, and notice what I'm negating is the whole thing. It is not the case that trees are humans and Ariana is present in the class or is in the class. Is what I wrote, the last thing I wrote in the chat bar, is that true? It is not the case that trees are humans and Ariana is in the class. And that doesn't map onto anything on the sheet right now. Actually, it would look like this, right? It is not the case that trees are humans and Ariana is in the class. Oopsie, once again, I forgot to do this. But just look at the chat bar. Do we agree or disagree with what I wrote? It's not the case that trees are humans and Ariana is in the class. The whole thing that's in my chat bar right now. Agree or disagree? And if you can't see that right, all right, so how about this? Trees are humans, because we're so dumb, it's hard to see as soon as we have one negation. Trees are humans, and Ariana is in the class. Wait, don't type anything. Is in the class. What I just chatted in the bar, do you agree or disagree? What I just chatted in the bar. Trees are humans, and Ariana is in the class. The whole thing. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, so if you disagree with that claim, do you then agree that it is not true that, and then I'm going to put the same thing, trees are humans and Ariana is in the class. Ariana is in the class. Do you agree with what I've just typed in? So now I'm reversing the polarity. Earlier, you disagreed with the content of that. Now I'm saying it is true that, sorry, I'm supposed to say it is not true. Crap, I missed a not. Let me just erase that. I'm going to do it again. It is not true that trees are humans and Ariana is in the class. That's what I had written again a moment ago, and you all had disagreed, and now I say it is not true that. Yeah. Now you agree with the claim that it is not true that, right? So it doesn't matter, once you have one falsehood, it doesn't matter what you can join that falsehood to, right? So let me put a shaded a cut here. Here's a cut. Here's a falsehood, right? I'm going to put trees are humans. It doesn't matter what you put in here, true or false. Once you have one falsehood, whatever you put after that will be understood to be conjoined with it, right? They taken together, they're juxtaposed. That's conjunction. They're juxtaposed, right? The earth is flat, right? It's not true that trees are humans and the earth is flat. Or I can decide to put Ariane is in the class, or I can decide to put Mark is a great teacher, or I can decide to put Mark is not a great teacher, right? It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to put in here, because I've got a falsehood, I can add and graft whatever because there's an implicit and here. And I'm going to make that implicit and in color here. There's an implicit and. So you can write whatever you want. You're negating the whole string of this and whatever the heck you feel like putting. So you can write whatever you want. Can everyone see that? If it's clear, write clear. And if you're lost, write lost. And some of this stuff can be rectified with meditation, but yeah. So the way it works, again, just to wrap up, that's our last inference rule, and then we're going to start using all this stuff, right? If I have a negated claim, right, it's not true that the earth is flat. And notice that anything I put next to it, anything whatsoever, is implicitly going to be joined to it because the and is the mere fact that they're juxtaposed. Let F stand for the earth is flat. So remember, the things that you symbolize with a capital letter always has to be without any negations inside them. You will just assert them. So I'm going to say the earth is flat. That's my convention. I'm doing a claim right now. Look in the chat bar. F stands for the earth is flat. You can say, and here you are, right? It's true that it's not the case that the earth is flat and whatever the heck you want. Can everyone see that? Let me again read that again. It is true that it's not the case that the earth is flat and then you whatever the hell you want to graph to it. Because once the earth, we know it, that the claim that the earth is flat is false, doesn't matter what else you're going to graph to it. It's going to come out false. If it's a conjunction, right? If it's tied together with an and, which it is, right? So once you go there, it's like, okay, I want you to agree to the following list of conditions. First list of condition, I get to slap you in the face whenever I want. Second condition, need I go on? Are you on board with my agreement? Like we're drafting up an agreement, right? It's a lease for an apartment. And the first item on the lease is you agree to all of these. So all of the items on the list, you can imagine, are all connected by an and, right? So everything that I put on this list, you're going to agree, it's going to be connected by and. So this is my lease, right? So I say lease, right? And I'm going to start listing the items on the lease. Here we go, right? I get to eat the food from your fridge. This is your landlord talking, right? Whenever I want. Item number two. Do you care what comes next? Are you agreeing to this lease? And why not? And it doesn't matter, like it doesn't matter what I put next because when you sign the lease, you agree to all of the claims, right? It's this item and this item and this item. If you don't care, you're done, man. You're gonna put a big cut around all that stuff. You're gonna be like, there's no way, pal. I disagree. Let me stop you right there is what you would say, right? You'd say, let me stop you right there and negate. I'm not signing on to that. There's no way. You don't need to go on. And he says, well, wait a second. I have a great story to tell you about how I'm gonna clean your windows. You'd be like, let me stop you right there, pal. The first conjunct was a deal breaker, right? The first conjunct in the conjunction, the first item that we're stringing together with these ands got me negating the whole crap. Ariane, I'm glad you like that example. I just made that one on the go. I recently moved and signed a lease, right? That's a fresh one in my memory, but I think it did the trick. So when you have a situation where you're negating something, the rest is up for grabs, right? Whatever it is, you have G over here, whatever you want to put in here, make it up, right? And for those of you who've done some logic, actually, I won't go there. I could say something fancy, but it's just going to probably alienate everyone except like 3 people. All right, cool. We now know our inference rules, right? All are permissions. They're technically called permissions. I always use the word inference rules because that's how we call it symbolic logic. Double cut, let's revise them. Let's just remind ourselves what the heck we're doing. Having once written something upon the sheet or an area cut from the sheet, all that we have to do is to avoid all danger of transforming the true into the false. By a rule of transformation, we mean a general permission to make certain diagrammatic transformations under certain circumstances on the ground that such a diagrammatic transformation can never transform anything true into anything false. Let us draw up 5 statements of these permissions. Double cut. The double cut may be inserted around or removed from any graph on that area. Check. Make sure everybody's clear. If that's clear, say clear, because then we're really going to move on. Double cut, we're clear? Last call for questions for double cut. Cool. Erasure. An evenly enclosed graph, that is, any that's on an unshaded white surface, may be erased. Clear or questions? Type clear if you're clear. Ask a question, you got a question. Last round for questions. Say clear if that's clear. Erasure. We can move that out of the way. Well, I'm just going to assume everyone's saying clear unless you have a question. Insertion. Any graph may be scribed on an oddly enclosed or shaded area. That's the one we just saw. After that, I'd like to touch base with everyone. That was clear. Any graph may be scribed on the gray sheet, the gray portion. You got a gray portion, have a ball. Put whatever the hell you want. And obviously, the whatever hell you want is going to be something that's, you know, of use to you. Iteration. Any graph scribed on any area can be iterated either on the same area or within any nested cuts. And the iteration, the undo of iteration, any graph whose occurrence could be, doesn't have to be, in fact, but could be the result of iteration, may be erased. All right, let's practice. We've had a great time, by the way, because I had some structure, but you folks have done it really well, only with collaborating and volunteering your own claims. So that was amazing. I just want to do here a quick one. If you smash a vase, then the vase will break. If someone remembers how to do the if-then claims, go ahead and do it. So who's going to volunteer to do this one? Type yes if you want to volunteer. We're going to diagrammatically represent this one, just to remind ourselves if-then claims, how would they look like? If you smash a vase, then the vase will break. John, do you remember how to do it? If no one remembers, don't have to volunteer, I can tell you. I think I know how to do them. John, give it the old college try. You got the board. Sandesh, move your cursor. Let John do this. No worries, man. No worries. You mean you don't know? Cool, I'll do it. Let me do it. When you say, Andrew, you want to give it the go? Andrew, go for it. Step in. Let me just make sure that you can. There we go. Andrew, go for it. Take your time. No rush. And if you make a mistake, it's no big deal. This course is about a philosophy of making mistakes. So. All right. Not quite. Not quite. What Andrew wrote is if the vase breaks, then you smash it. That's not the same thing, right? Why? Let me just now use, it's not a permission. I'm just going to, for the sake, no problem, man. It's amazing. I actually deserve a round of applause, man. So let's give some love, because let's not forget that this is all like, we're trying this stuff out for the first time. So folks, give some love to Andrew on this. Yeah, he did amazing. All right, so Andrew, right? What does this say? Or actually, someone else than Andrew. Let's give Andrew a breather. What does this say? If B stands for the vase breaks and S stands for the vase is smashed, right? What does this say? B stands for the vase breaks. S stands for the vase is smashed. What does this graph right now say? There's no if, actually. It's just a conjunction. It's just a straightforward and. Peirce, The vase breaks and the glass isn't smashed, right? Vase can totally break without the glass being smashed. That's not what the claim we were saying earlier was saying, right? So what we had earlier was different. The claim is, if you smash a vase, then the vase breaks. The way it looks like in existential graphs is as follows. Let's imagine the following situation. You smash the vase and it doesn't break. You smash the vase and it doesn't break. The claim above says you're never going to see a situation like this. Yeah. So you have this, Reese. That's what you need. Yeah, you need 2 cuts. What does this say? It says you smashed it and it didn't break. It's an unbreakable vase. According to this graph right now, this is an unbreakable vase. You smash it and it doesn't break. Does everyone agree? Can everyone see that? You smash it and it doesn't break. So S and not B. It's like, man, you use it as a bulletproof vest. You know, we should equip cops with that vase on their chests. Seriously, right? The claim above says, if you smash a vase and the vase breaks, it's saying you're never going to find this situation. It is not the case that you'll smash it and it won't break. And that's how you do the if-then. The antecedent, the if part, what goes after the if part, right? Let me color code this. What goes after the if part, that's called the antecedent, that ends up in this portion over here, right? It's always here. It's on this side. And what ends up being the consequent, that is what goes after the then part, that always ends up being here. That's an if-then claim. I'll first call this a scroll sometimes. It's a figure we'll see often. That's what an if-then. So Andrew, you were really close, but you inverted the antecedent and consequent. That's the only fine-tuning we got to do. Yeah. So is that clear, everyone? We'll need that just to practice on the argument I'm about to do. Tell me clear if that's clear. You're never going to find a situation where the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. And if you think of the truth table, if all of you have done truth tables, that's what a conditional is. You're never going to find a condition where the antecedent, the thing in purple, is true, and the consequent, the thing in blue, is false. You're never going to find that situation. So that's one of the second row in a truth table of a conditional, if that means something to you. And I know that, Andrew, that means something to you. All right, let's look at an argument now. We're going to practice all this stuff, and we're going to put it to good use. Now I want you to just rely on your normal English intuitions. We're not going to do existential graphs for a moment. Let's just go back to where we were with our normal intuitions. If the US fires its missiles at China and China fires its missiles at the US, then World War III begins. The US fires its missiles at China. China fires its missiles at the US. Therefore what? Complete the sentence. World War III begins. Agreed. Therefore, W, right, which stands for World War III begins. We can all draw this conclusion. Do we agree this is the correct conclusion? Tell me agree if you agree. That based on this argument, that's the correct conclusion to draw? If the premises are true, then that would be the right conclusion to draw from this. We are able to infer this. All right, prove it. Well, guess what? We can actually prove it. What would it mean to prove it? It would mean the following. First, you construct a diagram for all of the premises. What's the first premise? The first premise is if the United States fires, and the premise is a reason, by the way. So this is an argument, and whatever reasons are given in support of the conclusion. So just a quick reminder of what arguments are, right? Again, I don't want to assume anything, right? What we have here is a conclusion in blue. World War III begins. Why? Because, and then we're given reasons, and the reasons are called premises. The reasons are over here. One of the reasons is that if the US fires its missiles at China and China fires its missiles at the US, then World War III begins. That's one of the reasons, the reason in purple. Another reason, the reason in, let me pick another color, right, in pink, is that the US fires its missiles, because remember here it says if the US fires its missiles. This second claim here in pink says, and in fact, it is firing it. And then another claim over here, let's say in orange, also China does fire its missiles. So remember here, it's just like conditional, hypothetical. If China fires its missiles, now in orange we're saying, and in fact, now it's satisfying that condition. It's firing those bloody missiles. Well, if you take those three reasons, the first one in purple, the second one in pink, and the third one in orange, you get the conclusion in blue. So far, so good without any, everyone understands this argument. We know what an argument is. You've done some philosophy, right? We all know this. If it's clear, type in clear. Just the English part of it, right? Just the English part before we start using all our cool tools. And so here's the million-dollar question. How do we check whether what we generated as a blue line, namely World War III begins as a conclusion, how do we check whether that indeed follows from the premises? Well, we have tools. The way you do that in existential graphs is you write out a graph of all of the premises. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the purple claim. I sound like Bob Ross here, right? I'm going to write the purple claim. The purple claim says what? It says, if U and C, then what? If U, then C, then what happens? Then W. You got it, Ariana. Then W. Then W. If U and C, then W. That's what the purple claim says. Can everyone see that? Say yes if you can see that. If the United States fires its missiles, that's U, and China fires its missiles, then World War III begins. For the same reason that this was the if-then claim that we saw a moment ago, right? It looked like, well, we did it earlier. There you go. All right. The second premise is the United States fires its missiles at China. I'm going to put this on the sheet of assertion. I'm now asserting, notice that here was quarantined inside a cut, if the United States fires its missiles. Here I'm saying, and it is, I'm asserting the United States fires its missiles at China. And I'm also going to assert this, the third premise. China fires its missiles at the United States. These are all my premises. The first premise is over here. I'm going to circle with my red thing here. That's the first premise. This is the second premise. The United States, in point of fact, fires its missiles. And then the third premise is China fires its missiles. Does everyone see that I've correctly represented the premises as existential graphs? If you agree, write agree. This is just because the community needs to converge on this, make sure I don't make mistakes, right? Now, what would it look like? Type in the chat bar, what would it look like to assert the conclusion? The conclusion is that World War III begins. What would we type in the chat bar to say that? But what's the one letter we would type? W. And would we put it, that W, if we had to put it on the sheet of assertion, would we put it on, oh yeah, it should be J. You're right, you're right, there's a typo there. Thank you. Thank you. Let me just actually fix that up as best as I can. Thank you for spotting the typo. And again, this course gives me a free pass, well, not a free pass on typos, but we do learn, right? So this over here. Thank you, Andrew. That's a good call. And let me write that nice and clear. C. Cool. Thank you. So C, China fires its missiles at the US. Good. All right. And thank you. That's why we wanted to check. Notice here, again, an illustration of why Peirce was right. I was convinced I had done this correctly. And I went through the motions in the Peircean spirit of asking you to check for my mistakes. And lo and behold, I effed up. Look, you can't know what you don't know. Your mistakes are invisible to you. But we all triangulated on this, and someone spotted my mistake. God bless you, Andrew. All right, cool. And now if I had to write W, if I'm asserting this, I would put it on a shaded or unshaded space. Is this saying that World War III begins, or it's saying that World War III doesn't begin? Would I put it on a shaded or white space, the W? On a white space. So what I want to do is essentially, and I'm going to use a bit of a meta language here, right? That technically isn't part of existential graphs, but I want to know, right? And I'm going to put it in red because we haven't proved it yet, right? Can I transform these graphs to get a W? That's the game. Can I take the graphs in black on the left side and use my 5 permissions to end up with the graph W on the right side? That's the game. Can I transform these graphs with the truth-preserving permissions? Remember, the permissions never transform a truth into a falsehood. So on the assumption that everything I've written in black here, everything here in black, on the assumption that that's correct, it's all true, can I go from there to here, right? Using the 5 permissions. That's what it's going to mean to prove an argument in existential graphs. My friends, are you ready to do this? Because I'm going to let you do it. Are you ready? Type in ready if you're ready. All right, who wants to go first? Reese, you typed in ready. Reese, you want to have the first move? Say yes if you want to have the first move. Okay, Reese, type in, first of all, which permission you want to invoke. Think, choose strategically, deiterate. Reese is about to use deiterate. Reese, you have the board. To erase, by the way, you just take the pencil, make it really fat and white. Take the pencil, make it a fat thickness, and make it white. And just do one deiteration, and then we'll pause. Pause, 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 pause. You're going too fast. You're going too fast. You can just click undo. Just click undo. Yeah, cool. Pause. All right, I'm going to remove your powers. All right, everyone, did what Reese did, was this permitted or not permitted? What did Reese do? He removed the C that was over here. So Reese, I'm going to write back the C that you removed. Reese took this. Oopsie, I'm going to make it smaller, right? He removed the C over here. It's totally permitted. It was a good use. Yeah, it was a good use of it. So I'm going to do it again for some reason. Once Reese does something, or I don't know if it's just Reese or me, once someone does something, I can't mess with it. So I've lost my powers of doing something. I'm going to use permission. You're too powerful, Reese, right? Can everyone see that? What I just did? Let me just undo here. I'm removing this C on the shaded space in virtue of the iteration. Permitted or not permitted? I'm using this copy here. It could have been iterated, and I'm doing the undo. Permitted or not permitted? Let me again, just so we can see this more clearly. Reese did it correctly, but I want everyone to see this, right? I'm going to call this. I'm going to give myself a color here. I'm going to call this C2, and I'm going to call this C1. Could C2 have been the product of an iteration? Yes. And given that I have C1 there, would I be allowed to just remove the C2, to undo that iteration? Would I be allowed, yes or no? Well, then let's do that. I'm going to remove it. There I go. It's a goner. Reese, what you did was correct. Reese, what you did was correct. All right, who wants to volunteer to go next? Say yes if you want to volunteer. Remember the goal. We want to try to get the graphs on the left to transform into the graphs on the right. Andrew, go for it. You have the board. Type in your permission in the bar first. Type in the permission you want to invoke so we know what you're doing. Iterate, deiteration. So Andrew wants to use deiteration. Deiteration. Andrew wants to use deiteration. Andrew, go ahead. Looking good. I remove your powers. Everyone, was this permitted or not permitted? Permitted. That's right. That was a good use of deiteration. He deiterated the U inside the cut because he had another copy over here, a master copy, if you will, and he deiterated it. All right, who wants to go next? Ariana, you've got the floor. Ariana wants to do a double cut. Ariana, it's all yours. Go for it. Grab yourself a fat white pencil. Click on the first tools, pick the pencil, and then once you've picked the pencil, you'll have the thickness of the pencil option beneath. Pick the fattest one, and then beneath that, you'll have the color option. Pick white. Take your time. Pick the pencil, pick it fat, pick it white. I remove your powers. Everyone, did Ariana, what she did, was it permitted or not permitted? Community, what do you think? Permitted. Permitted. We're almost there, but we're not done yet. We have to get to the diagram in red. Okay, who goes next? Who wants to go next? Say who wants to go. Who wants to go? Type in the chat bar. We're almost there. I need a volunteer. I did enough. I did enough, man. I want to sit back and see my students do this. Sumdish, what inference rule, what permission you want to use, Sumdish? Type in it first before I allow you to play with this. Iterate. Okay. And remember, the thing in red's not supposed to be there, by the way. It's just our goal. I just want to remind us what the goal was. So Sumdish, you want to rethink the permission you want to use? Remember, the thing in red is just the goal that we want to achieve. It's not actually on the sheet of assertion. I'm just putting it there just to remind us what the goal was. And folks, you can help out Sumdish. Cool. No, you can't just, that would be too easy. You just drag it over on the side that you want. No, it doesn't work that way. Suggestions, people. What inference rule should we use? Reese, you've got the board. Jump in. Reese is using erasure. Use it one at a time. Cool. Did what Reese do, is that permitted or not permitted? He erased the U. It was on a white surface, and he erased it. It was permitted. Reese, keep going. Bring it home for us. Reese, you can do the other one. Erasure once again. That was also permitted. What are we left with? We got exactly what we wanted, which is the conclusion. What's the conclusion? World War III begins. W. We did it. My friends, this is how you prove an argument in existential graphs. You go from the premises to the conclusion, you put the premises into diagrams, and then you manipulate the diagrams until you obtain the conclusion, and that's how you prove the argument. What did you think of this? Did you like this? I agree that it is super cool, and I've always dreamt of doing this with a kind of a software that it will allow me to do it. It's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle. Well, my friends, I'm going to show you one brief other little trick so that you can be, no one's ever done anything like this before, Ariane. It's the logic of the future. You are literally the first generation of humans who is learning this trick, because I'm like the only person on the planet who teaches this, who can teach it so well, in fact. My friends, there's something called, what we just did was called a direct derivation. So if you go back to what we wanted to do today, right? We've done a lot of things. We've succeeded at a lot of things. We put on our VR goggles. We've learned our 5 permissions. What we just did was called a direct derivation, right? I'm just going to show you super briefly how to do an indirect derivation. Or actually, maybe I'll leave that for next week. I'll leave that for next week. I think you've got a full plate. What we did was a direct derivation. Next week, we'll pick up where we left off. I'd rather that we get this really well. This is what your homework is now going to look like for this week, because you're going to have a quiz next week. So what are we doing now? What are we doing now is you have no entry, but you're going to have a handout, because next week at the end of class, we're going to have a quiz, multiple choice, right? You're going to have a quiz. But let me show you what your homework is going to look like now, because this is going to be very different than just readings in English, right? Let me just move forward here, right? And eventually, by the way, we just proved this argument. Next week, my friends, we're going to tackle this one. Remember this one? Next week, I swear to you, we're going to try to see whether or not this conclusion follows from the premises. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah. We're going to do this. We're going to do this, right? Remember, our intuitions were failing us, right? Arjun writes, so these diagrams are meant to convey meaning through the deconstruction of the diagram. So if the diagram exists with cuts and objects, it's not really saying anything except providing an image of the argument. That's exactly right, Arjun. And reread our reading again. It'll make sense. The more you practice this, when you reread the Peirce packet 7, it'll make even more sense. The more you read it, the more you'll be like, oh man, I understand now where he was talking about. That crazy old fart, right? We're going to do this, right? We've worked on this. So this was the all the stuff about nesting. I'm going to show you now some things I've put on Moodle. One of the things I put on Moodle is this file. Only the first sheet is typed. The rest is handwritten. These are handwritten notes I wrote some time back. There is no textbook in this. I'm the only person who can teach this at an undergraduate level, pretty much. You can have a look at this file, right? It summarizes everything we did. So in addition to watching the reruns and having done the file, and you have here also, for instance, different ways of diagrammatically representing claims, right? So it is the case that P and Q, right? Hey, no worries, Ariana. It's not the case that P and it is the case that Q. It is not the case that P and Q. Plus, I put it in symbolic logic if that means something to you, right? So I've put this on the side here. There's lots of sheets in here. I re-talk about nesting, so you can go over and practice nesting once again, although I think my little animals are much cooler. Then there's illustrations of each inference rule, double cut, erasure, iteration, insertion, iteration. Reese, earlier you were wondering, or someone was wondering whether or not that would end up with a falsehood. Here's a truth table for showing you why iteration would be truth preserving. So those of you who have some background in logic, enjoy that. If you don't, just skip those parts, right? Deiteration, and again, a proof of why deiteration is valid. And then some arguments to practice on. 5 arguments done 2 ways. Here's an argument, for instance, right? If I go to the restaurant, then I will miss the game. Now, I am going to the restaurant, therefore I will miss the game. And here's what it would look like. So I go step by step and I show you this stuff. They're handwritten because I hadn't worked all those up as a file, but eventually I did. So there's different ways of doing it. Next week, we'll talk about indirect derivation. There's 2 approaches to proving an argument. And this is what they look like. So they step by step. So first transformation, second transformation, and so on. So you can go layer by layer. How do we get to the conclusion, right? So you have a handwritten file. The handwritten file, by the way, and look how it can get really cool. Look at this one. How's that? So take out some sheets of paper. You're going to be doing a lot of drawing this week. And this is what it looks like. I also, at the end, and you have the primary source materials on the website. This is the color-coded stuff. There's some wacky Peirce stuff that gets even crazier. You think this was hard. It gets more and more insane. You're taking baby steps into a whole new world. Trust me. We could take this to the complete next level. What we're learning are called alpha graphs. There's beta, delta, and gamma graphs. It gets even crazier, and we're not going to do that, obviously. This is just an introduction to Peirce's thought. And so that's one of the files that I've put there. Another file is also these questions and answers. So let me just show you the questions. This is your homework for this week. Since I haven't taught you indirect derivation, your homework for this week is to do questions 1 to 14. So do those. And the instructions are as follows. Represent the premises of the following arguments with existential graphs, then modifying those graphs with the 5 diagrammatic permissions, show how one can obtain a graph of the conclusion. So you have 14 exercises to practice on. I didn't teach you how to do indirect, but next week we can have some more practice on, and I'll have more handouts for you. And the solutions are going to look like this. These are the premises. Inference rule, deiteration. Notice how you can go back and forth. Look at what I'm doing here. Those are the premises. I deiterate the P. I erase. I use double cut. And I end up with a conclusion. Here's the premises, right? I deiterate. I erase. And at each step, you have all of the inference, all of the permissions that are being used, right? And these are the solution sheets. You have to view them as like a slideshow. This is like a movie evolving in time. This is what the logic of the future looks like. And notice on the bottom in green, at each step, you have the status of what's going on at this particular state in the graphs, right? And these are the solutions to your exercises. And the exercises get more and more wacky. and more fun and more complicated, and you're going to have a mind trip. And I recommend that you smoke some cannabis. And you should, yeah, the moves are all listed underneath. Yeah, you should always track which moves you're doing, Andrew. So always write the moves for yourself, whether or not you write them like a cartoon, like you can write them like a comic book, right? But between each frame of a comic book, say which inference rule you use, which permission, because that's vital. It's absolutely vital to tracking whether or not you got it right, each step. And this is what it looks like, right? And this is what it's going to look like, my friends. And then you're going to have challenges like, how do I get to here from there, right? And next week's going to get even wackier and harder, and your quiz is going to be on this stuff, right? So that's what you practice this week. My friends, as I'm giving you a visual buffet of what this looks like, Ariana writes, on a side question, how will the final exam be with this part? Will it be like the quiz? Yeah, it'll be like the quiz. Yeah, it'll be a part of the exam that's like the quiz. So once I prepare you for the quiz, I prepare you for the final, no surprises, right? And so like take, for instance, right, all of this stuff, look at this. And again, this is actually really hard. Like you got to be real clever to figure out how to do this stuff. And it's going to require you to experiment and to have fun with these things. My friends, what do you think of this homework for this week? Is this looking wacky? What do you think? It's going to be logic like you've never seen it before. It's so fun. You're going to have so much fun. And this is what it is, right? And remember I said we use our hands. It's not just about looking. You're going to have to try things, right? Next week, I'll give you even more harder homework. Let me just show you a homework from next week just to give you a sense of what to expect. So I'm going to just show you some of the homework. I'm going to end with, I like ending, and those of you who've taken logic with me, always like ending with a challenge piece, right? So let me show you a homework from next week. All right. And this is going to be the big challenge. All right. Extra handout questions. Hold on. And then we'll wrap up the class. I just want to show you. I like to end with a challenge question. This is going to be the challenge question at the end of this 2 weeks. How do we go from the graphs at the top to the graph at the bottom? The graph at the top, those are the premises. The graph at the bottom, those are the conclusion. Your job, should you decide to do it, it's like go from these graphs, right? You go from all of this to this, only with the 5 permissions. And at each step, you got to back it up. So each step has to be taken carefully. So that's going to be the final challenge at the end of our 2 weeks, right? Get ready for that. You're going to have to work your way up to, this is the big candidate. This is the Mike Tyson. So before we go for our Mike Tyson or whoever, or George St. Pierre, we got to work up the little contenders, right? You're going to have a good time with this. And so this is a thing I no longer teach this in logic. I used to, but I've decided that I'm going to keep it for my Peirce class. But one person has benefited from this. Julia, who was in our class, has learned this. So one cohort, at least one person from the cohorts, when I had fun teaching this in logic. But yeah, and so let's have a look at what we have to do now. Let's wrap up because we had a really full class today. And I want to give a huge bump knuckles to everyone. You all played along really well, and we didn't screw up. We were able to use the software really well. So a huge round of applause to everyone for volunteering. Remember, there's no handout this week. Yeah, a huge round of applause. Just lots of love for everyone. This class went amazing. Next week, we do some more, okay? So next week, we're going to take it to the next level. I'd like it if next week, when we don our VR goggles together, everyone spent the week practicing so we can take it to the next level. You can rewatch the reruns if you don't understand the permissions. I would like not to spend any minute next week talking about the permissions. I'd rather we hit the ground running and talk about indirect derivations. I'll tell you about contrapiction and how we can derive these arguments, that is, obtain the conclusion from the premises slightly differently. And so that's what we got to do. And at the end of next week, you'll have a 15-minute multiple choice quiz that's going to test whether or not you did the practice. So the practice is obligatory. And it'll make next classes more fun. My friends, on that note, is everything crystal clear, or do you have a question? If it's crystal, type in crystal. If you got a question, last round for question. But a jam-packed class. Jam-packed. And Ritu, if you have a question, type your question. Just go ahead and no worries. If you got a question, ask your question. If everything's clear, then we're done. Looks good. All right, well, on that note, my friends, let's say goodbye. We can remove our VR goggles. We are done. You can return to the world, you know, this world, the outside world. Let's remove our goggles and say goodbye. Bye, Owen. You did amazing today. And thanks everyone for making progress in the class and making mistakes. Thanks, Sundish. And you say, I make mistakes, you make mistakes. Amazing. Ariana, thanks for being my mascot. You always cheer me up. Reese, thanks. Good. Have a good week, my friend. And I hope you watch Loki. John, take care. Andrew, so long. Ariana, I'm loving it. Quadruple smile to you too. Hannah, see you next week. Ritu, have a great day. Now, Sasrikel, take care, my friends. Bye. Quintuple smile, quadruple smile. Jam-packed class, everyone. Bye, Nav.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
All right. Well, this was an amazing class. Everyone's left. We did a lot today, and this is the logic of the future. One of the things that you folks are, you're the cutting edge. I have a sense that when we finally get around, or I finally get around to writing an accessible textbook about this stuff, this will become very mainstream. So you're like, it's as if like you're learning something that's going to be, I believe, kind of part of every logic class in about 50 years or so. But it would require someone to translate Peirce's very, very difficult and advanced writings into something accessible with lots of examples. And that's what, at a very slow pace, I might like to do. But we'll see about that. But either way, it's part of Peirce's thought. It's what he thought was the crowning jewel of all of his accomplishments. A lot of people know him for his pragmatism, his semiotics, but man, the guy is a genius, and there was a lot in there. So I hope you liked today's class. You did amazing. Next week, we do more of the same. So we put our goggles, we meet in the sheet of assertion space, and we do some more. All right, everyone. See you next time.